Well, hey, family, take a moment and breathe. You've made it to another year, 2025. And so I just wanted to come in and take a few moments and discuss something that was on my mind as I build my thought process for as we go into this new year. And I was thinking about as we go into this new year, there must be an element of protection that we have implemented in order to experience the fullness that God has for us. And so one of the things I was thinking about was from based on Ephesians 6, 11 through 18, where Paul talks about the whole armor of God. And so one of the things, the protective mechanisms that we can use as we're going into this year is the concept of the whole armor of God. But I want to think about this text from a different perspective, because if we look at the etymology of the word armor, now it's interesting because in the Latin, the word armor means weapons, right? And the seed of our modern word armor lies in the Latin word armor, which is referred to as weapons or tools of war. And so the word armor in Latin describes both the act of arming oneself and the equipment that you're using to armor or protect yourself. If you look at the etymology from the Old French, it means protective gear. And so when I begin to think about that, because when we think about the whole armor of God, we think about this big old suit that you use for war or battle. But in this particular space and time, we have to look at the armor of God, not just as a protective device, but we must bring balance, because you have to understand that your armor cannot be so heavy that you can't battle. I'll say that again. Your armor cannot be so heavy that it limits your mobility, because that would limit your capability to properly battle. And so as we go into this year of 2025, we got to understand that we got to begin to make our loads lighter so we can truly put on the whole armor of God. And so I want you to understand why your armor must be light versus heavy. You see, because in ancient warfare and even in today's time, armor needs to strike a balance between protection and mobility. See, it has to be a balance, because a heavy plated suit may offer superior defense, but it can weigh the wearer down. A lighter suit might allow for quick movement, but provide less coverage. Spiritually speaking, there must be a balance between the two as we go into this year. We have to understand the purpose for heavy armor, because it maximizes your defense, but it can slow you down and cause fatigue and limit agility. The light armor may sacrifice coverage, but it grants you the flexibility and speed for essential swift action and strategic retreats. And so this is why Paul admonishes us to put on the whole armor of God, because it implies that it's divinely tailored for you. What am I saying? As you're going into this year, we got to put on the whole armor of God, because that means it's divinely protected for you. This is what the case was going on with Saul and David. David said David could not wear Saul's armor. Why? Because it was too heavy. It didn't fit him. It wasn't tailored. And so that's going to be one of our principles going into this new year, is that you got to put on the whole armor of God so it's divinely tailored for you. That is not too heavy and it's not too light, but there's going to be the perfect balance that meshes with your destiny, your purpose, and it will allow you not only to be a defensive mechanism, but it'll allow you to also magnetize things that are designed for your life. And so what are some distinct qualities of the armor of God? One is it's a divine source. The armor is called the whole armor of God because its origin and power comes from God himself. The next aspect is that the armor of God, it represents freedom and flexibility. In this year of 2025, we're going to have freedom and flexibility because the suits that we're wearing, it's not just for warfare, but it's a sign, it's a protective symbol. And so it's going to bring freedom and flexibility because the armor is also spiritually light based on the grace and the purpose of God. And so the armor of God also represents active engagement because it reminds us that the armor also has it's not just a defensive purpose. So you're not going to live this year in a defensive mode, always looking over your shoulder, wondering about bills, wondering about your health, wondering about your family. That's the defensive mode. But the whole armor of God also has an offensive dimension, which is not only going to allow you to survive the trials and tribulations that we may face, but it's going to allow you to actively overcome. And that's why I started off this brief teaching by saying breathe, because you've made it. And so as we understand this concept of putting on the whole armor of God, it's not just a suit of warfare, but I'm going to call it gear of protection because it has both defensive and offensive possibilities. And so I want to encourage you as we're going into this new year that the armor of God is a divine source that's going to grant freedom rather than oppression. And it's going to cause you to be actively engaged in this year. Don't worry about what happened last year, but it's going to allow you to be actively engaged and face whatever trials and spiritual battles that we'll face. And we are truly going to overcome. And so it's going to both allow us to be strong enough and light enough to move forward in God's power. I pray God's best for you in this year. See you next time on the next transmission. Later.